The pagan to Christian conversion pushed an evil reign of brutality against the Aryan folk whom were once a deeply spiritual pagan people. Though this conversion is often depicted as peaceful, it was really anything but. It took an arduous process of absolute vicious atrocities beyond comprehension for the success of this religious conversion. And I believe that the collective trauma of this ancestral wound lives in the genetic template of the Aryan folk, awaiting for the dark night of the soul where we will revisit that which lay dormant in the subconscious mind, because only through facing trauma head-on can we hope to heal, transmute, and birth anew. And until then, we live in the aftermath of this ancestral trauma that was inflicted upon our collective racial spirit. In the aftermath of the conversion, we continue to spiritually capitulate through the enemy's endless psychic manipulation. Through incessant psychological trauma such as gaslighting and other means of tricking the psyche, we just accept that this was a natural religious conversion. We believe the lie that paganism was immoral, demonic, the worship of false idols, etc., which couldn't be further from the truth. Paganism was more than a religion. It was a code of being for our ancestors. It was the original Christianity, that which was polar, solar, and Nordic. Chastity was an oath sworn to by the Cathars and Templars alike, because to the Aryan people, virginity and chastity was regarded as one of the highest virtues, which should reveal the ongoing lie about pagan sexual immorality, a blatant lie that is often used by the Christians as one of the reasons for this brutal religious conversion. Chastity is the highest virtue of the Aryan because pure Aryans revere true love, because they remember in their hearts the memory of Orphic love, and therefore they live in devotion to Amor, opposite of Roma and therefore opposed to the Christianity of Rome, which is nothing but demiurgic hypnotism. What is vital to grasp is that all things Hyperborean, Aryan, and Pagan have been severely skewed through false posturing and negative framing. Most everything that is spoken about on the histories of our folk have been severely manipulated in an attempt to entirely destroy the sanctity of our divine ancestral story. We can only reclaim truth through the purest memory stored in our astral blood, that which can be invoked by the flame that burns in the too few. Just here on Google, I typed what happened to paganism. It says, why did paganism disappear? By the early Middle Ages, faiths referred to as pagan had mostly disappeared in the West through a mixture of peaceful conversion, natural religious change, persecution, and the military conquest of pagan people. It's just funny how it is often conveyed as a sort of peaceful conversion, like a natural shift in religious thought and blah, 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 when really it was the most horrific, barbaric, torturous reign of bloodshed and death to convert the Aryan pagan people to Christianity. But we are not allowed to revisit that truth because there's so much disinformation surrounding that time in history, that specific timeline, because that is the root of the wound that ails our people. It's the entry point of the parasite-that-be that infected our racial spirit, our racial consciousness with a Christian disease. Now, interestingly, if you look up Christianity and paganism in Wikipedia, right, it says paganism is commonly used to refer to various religions that existed during antiquity and the Middle Ages, such as the Greco-Roman religions of the Roman Empire, including the Roman imperial cult. During the Middle Ages, the term was also adapted to refer to religions practiced outside the former Roman Empire, such as Germanic paganism, Egyptian paganism, and Baltic paganism. From the point of view of the early Christians, these religions all qualified as ethnic or Gentile, ethnikos gentilis, the term translating goyim, later rendered as paganist. Through the etymology of the term Gentile, we uncover a deeper truth that reveals the plight that still ails our people from the past into present day. Gentile is described as a non-Jew, or one who is not a Christian. a pagan. From late Latin noun use of Latin gentilis, of the same family or clan. Here we see the ethnic connection in paganism that reveals those of a same race or clan. From root gene, give birth, beget, with derivatives referring to procreation and familial and tribal groups. The Latin adjective also means of or belonging to the same nation. Hence, as a noun, Gentiles might mean men of family, persons belonging to the same family, fellow countrymen, kinsmen. In this etymological description, we see how Gentiles are of an ethnic kinship, those familial folk belonging to the same pagan nation, positioned as distinct from the Jew and Christian, as Gentile is literally a term coined to describe one who is a non-Jew or one who is not a Christian, as we see via the etymology, which itself reveals the treasonous position of the Christian who is severed from this ethnic pagan nation by proclaiming him or herself as a Christian. This affirms that the Gentile is a nemesis to both Christian and Jew, as further description refers to these Gentiles as foreigners or barbarians. The enemy always uses derogatory language to insult the name of the Aryan, Hyperborean. And furthermore, on the etymology website, we find synonymous terms under the researched word Gentile that mirror the term Gentile in parallel likeness. We come across the term Goy or Goyim, again, a name to describe those of non-Jewish nations. Notice how then Gentile and Goyim further branches out into the terms pagan and heathen. Notice how Christians are separate from these ethnic conservators, as they are positioned with the Jews, distinct from the Gentiles, as again, Gentile literally means non-Jew or one who is not a Christian. The Gentiles are then the pagans, the heathens, those who preserve their ancestral magic, separate from Jews and Christians alike. Revealingly, Gentile further links to the term gentle, which is a term that means well-born or of noble rank or family, which is most curious as we know the term Aryan etymologically means high-ranking person, noble, which is why it's no surprise the term Aryan is linked to Gentile, gentle, heathen, pagan, goy, or goyim on the tree of etymology. All that to say that etymologically breaking down these terms should serve to reveal the greater picture in regards to the Aryan race and the pagan to Christian conversion, and who is behind this manufactured doctrine that is so clearly designed to destroy the ethnic kinship of the Aryan people, converting them into mere slaves of this devious anti-race, the tribe in which cannot be named. One must pause in the chaos of the world and really dig in the depths to remember exactly how the persistent and brutal persecution of our people is what supported the pagan to Christian conversion many moons ago. For Aryan man or Aryan woman to proclaim themselves proud Christians, all they are doing is showcasing a tragic display of ancestral treason. That's all that it is. Right? The thing is, it's through the tortures that were brought upon our people during this specific timeline, right? Like during the Inquisition, where paganism was literally beaten out of our people. It created a ancestral trauma, right? A collective ancestral trauma that I feel we suppress and in place cling to the religion of conversion for safety in sort of the same way. It's like Stockholm syndrome, where you sort of glorify and worship your oppressor. Like that is what Aryan man or women who claim proudly that they are Christians, it's Stockholm syndrome. It's them dealing with that collective ancestral trauma by clinging to what was replaced in place of our ancestral religion, right? And if you just look to the torture devices that were used, it was brutal. The persecution was brutal for those who were apostates, for those who were heretics. They were brutalized in the most torturous ways that completely stained our collective racial spirit. And this is why we cling to Christianity in these days as a cope. It is a coping mechanism. It is Stockholm syndrome. It is worshiping our oppressors, those who have brutalized and tortured our people in times past up into present day, where we are not even able to discuss or revisit in truth this trauma, this drama that so deeply impacted our people. It is clear that Christianity was a doctrine that was intentionally curated to subdue and dilute the Gentile, aka the pagan or heathen of times past, severing them from their ancestral ethnic clan that once honored earth magic and astral wisdom, that in which empowered the light in their very soul, strengthening them as a collective folk, which is a direct threat to the parasites-that-be that thirst for slaves to support their evil reign. Christianity is enemy hypnotism, and the majority of our people who cling to it in these times of chaos are weak in the worship of it, as we so clearly see with those who are willing to forfeit integrity to support a foreign nation, despite the dire state of our own. This is what Christianity does to the mind. It's brain rot that devours the Aryan spark. All by design. And so through this peaceful conversion from paganism to Christianity, we see nothing but bloodshed. We see nothing but extreme torture, psychological manipulation, and so on and so forth. We see the burning of the Library of Alexandria, which was, the enemy's way of completely destroying the Gnosis of the white gods of old, aka the ancient Hyperboreans, right? Those of the Venusian extraterrestrial bloodline, right? These are the archives of our people, of ourselves in past form. The burning of the Library of Alexandria was the death, essentially, of the white gods and the Gnosis that contained the wisdom of that ancestry. And so, through that, I started delving into the Serapeum. So immediately when I was hit with the word Serapeum, I felt the transmission of serpentine energy, right? Because I receive specific words as codings. And so etymologically, seraph, right? And I'll put it on display here on the screen, is in reference to the winged, human-like celestial creatures that hovered above God's throne, right? A word first used by Milton, probably an analogy of cherub or cherubim. This is from late Latin seraphim, from Greek seraphim, plural of seraph, probably literally the burning one. From seraph, it burned. Seraphs were traditionally regarded as burning or flaming angels, though the word seems to have some etymological sense of flying, perhaps from confusion with the root word of Arabic sharafa, be lofty. Some scholars identify it with a word found in other passages interpreted as fiery flying serpent. And so immediately when I read this, as a Serranoist, you immediately hear Quetzalcoatl, which in turn you immediately hear Lucifer, right? Because we know that as initiates, Quetzalcoatl and Lucifer are one and the same. Also, in the Bible, Ezekiel 28:14 tells us that Satan was a cherub, one type of angel. But we must always bear in mind that when the Christians are speaking about Satan, they're really speaking about Lucifer, as can be detected via the coding, though Satan and Lucifer are not one and the same. Always remember that Satan is a derogatory name for Lucifer, much like Nazi is a derogatory name for Aryan or Hyperborean. Satan is the antipode of the Lightbringer. In any case, the coding here is most telling as we see through etymology the correlation between the words seraph and cherub or cherubim. Here we can see how cherubs, angels, and fiery flying serpents and or dragons interconnect most divinely, as they all belong to an archetypal memory that is intrinsically woven in the astral blood of the Hyperborean, Aryan, aka the true Luciferians, who are not spawns of the devil or Satan, but actually descendants of a serpentine race of Venusian extraterrestrials, whom throughout the cycles and rounds can be seen entering the second world of involution on the wings of the fiery serpent, or the Viking Drakkar ship, which to the initiates is seen as what is responsible for the legend of Quetzalcoatl. I wrote here that the connection of Seraph with the fiery flying serpent is significantly revealing, and that we immediately see the inner coding of the Lightbringer of Venus, with the telling description of the Burning One. And as initiates Hyperboreans awakening, we know that Lucifer is synonymous with Quetzalcoatl, who is described by the maestro as a fiery flying serpent. See then how Seraph, the Burning One, parallels Lucifer in description, and how the Serapeum appears to be an ancient Hyperborean relic, right? It's all Venusian. It's all an ancient Luciferic coding that when seen through the eye of Odal is easy to detect, as the coding never lies. Christians do, the Christian Bible does, but Luciferic, Venusian, Hyperborean codings never lie. It's of a high intelligent design that's, like I said, when taken in by the right mind, is easy to detect in how it all weaves together, golden and divine. To further support this theory, we look to ancient relics of the Serapeum that are weaved with sacred symbolism. We see Isis as Serapis' consort, because there is no Hyperborean he without a Hyperborean she. Here in the Serapeum, Serapis and Isis represent the divine masculine and divine feminine in holy matrimony. They are pictured in serpentine symbolism, which reveals to the eye that sees the Orphic alchemy of this pagan temple, which should further affirm its Venusian and therefore Hyperborean design. So much serpentine energy weaves within the Hyperborean story, and this is precisely why the number one symbol that is completely degraded and demonized in the Christian Bible is the serpent. Even still, there are still breadcrumbs of truths in the Christian Bible, because that's the only way that they'd be able to truly sell it to a once strong Aryan folk, and that is by mixing remnants of the true story in this counterfeit copy, aka judeo-christianity. And so when they speak of Lucifer being a serpent, I believe that is close to the truth, in that we see how Lucifer, the Burning One, was Quetzalcoatl, who was a fiery flying serpent. And this isn't an evil serpent. This is a dragon of majestic proportions. And I believe that the dragon is intimately connected to our story, and why it is a mythological creature that is seen as Hyperboreans' familiar. This is why we often see the sacred symbiosis with the Vikings and the dragon with their Drakkar ship, right? This is a sacred symbiosis because it is as Miguel Serrano would often say, a symbol that continues throughout the cycles, throughout the rounds, because it is a archetypal memory, right? Dragons and Hyperboreans are intimately connected, and whenever you see a dragon, whenever you see a serpent, you are bearing witness to a Luciferic divinity. And this has been hardwired in our brain by the enemy as something that is inherently evil, when it is the most sacred. This is why the enemy was hell-bent on rewiring your archaic mind with the lie that the serpent, that the dragon, that Lucifer is Satan and evil and something that is to be avoided and rejected at all costs in the name of Christ, when ironically it is Christ. Because the only thing that can create the Christ light, which in truth is ether, is vril, is the dragon magic, is the union of the two streams, the he-she currents of all everything, right? And so this is why it is important to mine the truths in the relics of the past, to receive transmissions via words that withhold and, contain codings that paint a broader picture in relation to what we lost, because it was a lot, right? The pagan to Christian conversion was a tragedy. We lost everything. And so, I see it to be that through the union of the serpentine energies of divinity, right? The he-she currents of all everything, I see that fusion to create dragon magic, which is ether, which is vril, which is the lost and free energy, right? And so this is the mystery key. And this is, again, like I said, why they completely convolute the coding to prevent one from remembering. And it's just so layered, because you see how they hijack our codings and our symbolism and use it for themselves. And that, like I always say, they infiltrate to subjugate. They invert to pervert. And that's exactly what they do with our codes and with our symbolism, not only through, judeo-christianity, but through all modern day programming, right? Most people see a snake and they're petrified. Most people hear about serpents and they're terrified. So this brings up another vilification of the Aryan that is often dispersed into the collective mind, and that is the talk of reptilians that you often hear about in so-called truther circles. I read to you an excerpt from the 55 Club's Final Battalion that I feel explains it perfectly. Quote, "This brings up another defamation by disinformation, the bizarre tale of the reptilians. The agents of the Old Testament would have you believe that the ancient Aryans were reptilians. This would be equivalent to calling the shining sun the realm of darkness." End quote. Furthermore, as I said above, in truther and esoteric circles alike, this idea has postured itself on the parasites-that-be, as they are often referred to as not only reptilians, but Luciferians. This is all because of their methods of subjugation through hijacking and inverting our codes and symbols, desanctifying that which is noble and extraterrestrial. Furthermore, in a continued excerpt from the Final Battalion, we read of Edward Thompson's description of the true origin of the feathered serpent in his groundbreaking work titled The Serpent People. Here I quote, "These traditions tell us, and carvings on ancient walls and stone columns sustain them, that unknown ages ago there appeared strange craft at the mouth of what is now known as the Panuca River in the state of Veracruz. The sides of these vessels shone like the scales of serpent skins, and to the simple natives who saw them approaching, they appeared to be great serpents coming swiftly toward them. In these craft were light-skinned beings, and some of the traditions have it that they were tall of stature and blue-eyed. They were clad in strange garments and wore about their foreheads emblems like entwined serpents. The wondering natives who met them at the shore saw the manner of their coming with the symbol of the sacred serpent, which they worshipped, on their brows, and knew the strangers to be their gods come down from their home in the sun to teach and guide them." End quote. And to further support Edward Thompson's explanation of the origin of the feathered serpent, look no further than the maestro's definition of Quetzalcoatl, where he states, quote, "It is possible the plumed serpent has to do with the Drakars, or Viking longships told, or fire in the hand-carved dragons on the mastheads of the prow, and shields looped through on port, and starboard that gleamed like gold or fire in the sunlight. Quetzalcoatl is like Wotan or Odin, a white Hyperborean hero, semi-divine, who came to these lands thousands of years ago." I just wanted to share that bit with y'all on this stream about the pagan to Christian conversion, because the sacred serpent is the magic that we lost through that conversion, and why they often conflate Lucifer with Satan, but why they sprinkle truth on that lie in calling him a dragon, the great dragon, or the serpent of old, right? It's like there's truth mixed with lies, and it just takes, the higher mind to detect the, the truth in and amid all of the lies, all of the deceit. And so I think in the beginning of this video, it's clear to see that Christianity was a religion designed to nullify the collective mind of the Gentiles, which we see is a term that connects to the Aryans, right? It's all etymologically proven, which just means it's basically all proven by code, because etymology is the codes behind the words that we use. And that's why I like to, as I said, lean into that to reveal a greater picture of the story that we are all immersed in, right? In this ongoing saga of the Hyperborean people. And so, yeah, it's clear to see why Lucifer is demonized, why he is often conflated with Satan. As I said, Satan is Kronos enslaved, and so they love to keep us in our imprisoned state. It's all psychological warfare. It's all manipulation of our collective psyche, and that's why the only way to free ourselves and grant our collective racial spirit sovereignty is through, the reclamation of these codes, of this symbolism, and of the overall Hyperborean, Aryan, Luciferian story. The serpent is recognized as Lucifer. Lucifer is misrepresented as Satan. But remember, Satan is Saturn enslaved, and therefore Satan is time and entropy, enslaved to the dark age of Kali, the opposite of eternity and immortality, which is the true celestial structuring of the Aryan Hyperborean being. The serpent in its exalted form is a dragon, and this is why the Christian Bible refers to Lucifer as the serpent of old, and also the great dragon. This great dragon is the plumed serpent, Quetzalcoatl, which is an archetypal memory that reorients one back to the truth of our origin. It is a code to our Venusian ancestry. Interesting that in Luke 10:18 we read, "I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning." Herein we see that who they refer to as Satan is actually really Lucifer, as we know the story of the morning star who fell to earth in a stellar combat. True paganism was and is the preservation of the lost Hyperborean Gnosis. It is the path of the serpents of Kundalini, divinely designed for the initiates of Amor. It is a solar doctrine of both the dark and light solar bodies. It is heaven and earth and the divine fusion of both. It is the black serpent and the gold serpent, the black sun and the gold sun, the left and right channels of the physical body, the he-she electromagnetic field of spirituality, the two sacred currents of all everything. This is why the serpent is central to the Hyperborean story, as seen in the Serapeum with Serapis and Isis, and also emblematically seen with the SS badge that reveals the esoteric truth of the sacred serpent. Two sig runes are the two serpents, he-she, black and gold, masculine and feminine lightning bolts, creative sparks of the black and gold sun or soul. When unified, this fusion begets Odal, which is the true fires of Christos. This is true sacred sexuality, and has little to do with carnality, for it is high soul alchemy. It is the earthly serpent who has been divided through catastrophe, reunified and transformed into the astral dragon of the ethers, the liberated one, Lucifer, a supreme being. This is the sex magic of Isis, and why the priestesses of Isis wore a gold serpent around their arm. I see that the priestesses of the Isis cult were really the Hyperborean priestesses of Amor. As we know, Isis is the Egyptian syncretic divinity for Eos, or Ostara of the dawn, she who hands the cup of the Grail to the warrior hero. Unfortunately, this holy order is often deeply misunderstood as a hedonist practice of mere carnal ecstasy, to experience by anyone with anyone, when true sex magic is Hyperborean Orphic alchemy. It has little to do with physicality, as it is deeply spiritual, astrological, and mythological. It is a sacred dance led by the Hyperborean priestesses of Amor, she who recognizes he. It is the sanctity and the purity in the return to the Orphic totality, only here now and in the coming dawn externalizing the divinity of the androgyne, giving God a face, one Hyperborean he for one Hyperborean she, who are bonded together eternally via the golden weave of destiny, the two whom are really one, unified by design through the Orphic egg of eternity. This is why Satanism, which poses as Luciferianism, uses a defiled version of the Baphomet with the horned beast, when in reality that is just another intentional deformation of an incredibly sacred symbol that was once revered by the Knights Templar. The true and pure version of the symbol of the Baphomet is the double-sided face of the Hyperborean he and the Hyperborean she, depicting with imagery our divine Orphic love story. The sanctity of the sacred serpent, as seen with Isis sex magic, is Hyperborean Orphic alchemy, and has nothing at all to do with the perversions of carnality and the demiurgic possession of the Kundalini via the fallen man's libido. This is true paganism, and why we see such symbolism in ancient pagan temples like the Serapeum. It is the Christianity of the Goths, the gods who have lost the vision of paradise, and the serpent who still holds the egg of Orphic perfection.